the specter and appreciates the specter of Russian aggression. It is a country that, with the support of the international community, endured aggression of its own just 15 or so years ago in 2008. We've continued to stand by Georgia, its sovereignty, its independence, its territorial integrity ever since. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. This is Jazay from Airway News in Pakistan. As you're well aware that Prime Minister Imran Khan is still blaming US for his ouster from PM's office, while he's also asking his supporters to keep protesting outside the White House. But yesterday, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar met with Mr. Khan in Islamabad. It was kind of an hour-long meeting. Close associates of Mr. Khan claimed that the United States trying to clear the air with Mr. Khan. Is it true that Ilhan Omar is representing Biden government there in Islamabad?
Well, as I understand it, Representative Omar is not visiting Pakistan on U.S. government-sponsored travel, so I need to refer you to her office for questions on.
So there was a bomb blast in Afghanistan yesterday, killing 17 people. Dozens were injured, and the attack was on Shia mosque. That suggests that ISIS, Daesh, is getting stronger in Afghanistan. The other terrorist organization also recruiting more fighters, forming safe havens there. What are your concerns, and what is the strategy to deal with this growing threat?
Well, there have been attacks in recent days, and earlier this week, the United States joined the international community in expressing our outrage in response to the heinous attacks on the Mumtaz Education Center and the Abdul Rahim Shahid School in Kabul. Special Representative for Afghanistan Tom West, Special Envoy for Afghan Women, Girls, and Human Rights Rina Amiri, and our chargé for the embassy in Kabul, currently operating out of Doha, Ian McCary, also denounced these cowardly attacks. We've also heard in more recent hours about more attacks that occurred today in 4 provinces in Afghanistan, including at a Shia Hazara mosque in Mazar-e-Sharif, and 3 other explosions that killed even more and left others wounded. We've offered our sincere condolences to the families and other loved ones of those killed in these cowardly acts, and we condemn these attacks and what appear to be the targeting of minority groups in the strongest terms. We are committed to supporting the ability of all Afghans, including Afghans' minority populations, including its religious minorities, to practice their religion freely without fear of violence against them. And we're extremely concerned about the recent rise of violence in Afghanistan and call for an end to these cowardly attacks and for the perpetrators to be brought to justice. All Afghan children, all Afghan worshippers, all of Afghans' minorities, religious or otherwise, deserve to pursue and to live their lives safely and without fear of violence. And the Afghan people deserve to live and worship free from terror.
But there are no foreign troops there. What is the strategy to deal with the situation? I mean, I don't know if you can send American troops there once again, but what is the strategy?
So that is not a tool that is in our toolkit when it comes to addressing this. But our strategy for Afghanistan principally entails supporting the humanitarian needs of the Afghan people. And we have made tremendous commitments to the people of Afghanistan in recent months. We've continued to be the world's humanitarian leader in our support for the people of Afghanistan. In every engagement we have with the Taliban, we address with the Taliban our core interests. And among those interests is to see to it that the rights of the Afghan people are respected. That includes by the Taliban, but doing everything that ruling authorities in Afghanistan can do to provide security for all of Afghanistan's people. That include its women, its girls, its religious minorities, and others who face persecution. This is a point that we always raise with the Taliban, and the Taliban know that in order for us to achieve progress, in order for us to have improved relations with them, in order for them to have improved relations with countries around the world, they will need to demonstrate progress on these interests that are core to us, that are important to us, but also important to countries around the world. So.
On China, President Xi Jinping today spoke about his proposal for a global security initiative, and he's talking about this, invoking the principle of indivisible security, obviously a Kremlin favorite phrase. I wonder if you had any response to that, and in particular, are you concerned that this is something that China could use, in relation to Taiwan or the South China Sea, to push back on actions by the US and those, or support from the US for countries in China's neighborhood, and potentially act in a similar way to how Russia has acted in Europe.
Well, we did take note of the remarks. Also took note of the reference to indivisible security, which is interesting in that we have continued to see the PRC parrot some of what we have heard coming from the Kremlin. This apparently applies to the concept of indivisible security. The Kremlin continues to maintain that attacking another country in an unjustified, unprovoked way, in a brutal manner, somehow bolsters security in the region. It is unclear to us how what the Kremlin is doing in Ukraine is at all related to any concept of security, including that of indivisible security. But there are broader principles at play, and we've always said that this is about Russia's war against Ukraine, but at the same time, it is about the principles and the rules that over the course of now 7 decades have governed the international system. This is about the rules-based international order that has ushered in the most peaceful and prosperous period in modern history. And along with like-minded partners around the world, this is a system that we helped build. It's a system that countries around the world, the United States included, continues to help shape. And it's a system built on shared values, including respect for human rights, sovereignty, self-determination, those principles that are meant to undergird and to fuel our ability to address our biggest global challenges. So especially as we face threats from Russia's unprovoked war against Ukraine, COVID-19 and climate change, we are committed to upholding the very system that certain countries around the world, and Russia and the PRC are among them, seek to challenge and in certain instances seek to tear down and even destroy. This is at the heart of why the international community has stood with the government of Ukraine, with the people of Ukraine, supporting their own aspirations for freedom, independence, democracy in a country of their own, but also recognizing that what Russia is seeking to do to challenge the international system and to undermine it is precisely what other countries have sought to do around the world, including in the Indo-Pacific. We understand that when this international system is undermined anywhere and done so with impunity, without challenge, that it is degraded everywhere. And so that is why not only have we stood up for these principles in Ukraine, in the context of Ukraine, but also in the Indo-Pacific as well.
Ukraine, please.
So, Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman is in Brussels talking to U.S. counterparts in Europe. She also expressed concern over China's amplifying some of the Russian disinformation. Could you give us an update? In the U.S. assessment, is China providing financial and material assistance to Russia in Russia's war on Ukraine, or is just a rhetorical support?
So first on the deputy's trip, as you alluded to, she is in Brussels, and she led the U.S. delegation for the 3rd high-level meeting of the U.S.-EU-China dialogue on China. And tomorrow she'll lead U.S.-EU consultations on the Indo-Pacific. She also participated today in a moderated discussion at an event hosted by the Friends of Europe think tank about U.S.-European collaboration on a wide range of shared challenges, including our shared approach to the PRC, our cooperation in the Indo-Pacific, our assistance to Ukraine, and sanctions on Russia as well. She will have an opportunity to speak publicly tomorrow during a press availability with European External Action Service Secretary General after the US-EU consultations on the Indo-Pacific. She will also meet with NATO allies and EU partners to discuss our continued close coordination on President Putin's war of choice, against Ukraine and other global issues. In addition to her engagements today and tomorrow, she, over the course of yesterday and today, held meetings with the NATO Deputy Secretary General, the NATO Permanent Representatives, European External Action Service Secretary General Sanino, and Head of Cabinet of the European Commission President Siebert. To your question about the PRC's approach to Russia, this is one that we have spoken to before. Ultimately, the PRC is going to have to decide to make its own decisions. It is our task to speak of the consequences for those decisions. And we made clear that if the PRC or any other country were to seek to offset Russia's losses or were to seek to provide weapons, supplies, needed material for its war effort in Ukraine, there would be serious consequences for any such country. We've been watching very closely. We offered an assessment a couple weeks ago that we had not seen any such support on the part of the PRC. That remains the case today, but we continue to watch very closely.
Speaking of consequences, could PRC face secondary sanctions if they support material and financial?
Again, we've made clear that any country that seeks to undermine our sanctions regime or seeks to provide support to Russia's war effort in Ukraine would face consequences, yes.
I have two quick questions. Regarding the security agreement between PRC and Solomon Islands, do you think this is a first step for PRC to militarize the Pacific Islands regions? And secondly, regarding the historical issues between Japan and South Korea, South Korea's incoming Foreign Minister Park acknowledged yesterday a bilateral agreement signed with Japan in 2015 for comfort women is official. What is your reaction to it?
So on the Solomon Islands, as we said before, we are concerned that the agreement, which was concluded in a non-transparent process, follows a pattern we've seen before. It's a pattern of the PRC offering shadowy, vague deals with little regional consultation in fishing, resource management, development assistance, and now security practices. The Prime Minister of the Solomon Islands has said he would like to release more details, but if and only if the PRC agrees. So it's really up to the People's Republic of China to show if it can be transparent on security matters that have raised concerns throughout the region from many Pacific Island countries. There are many countries in the region that would like to know more about this arrangement as well, and it's incumbent on the PRC to follow through with that. In terms of your question on South Korea, we're aware of the comments from the foreign minister nominee. We've long encouraged Japan and the ROK to work together on history-related issues in a way that promotes healing and reconciliation. Even while they are addressing sensitive historical issues, we are moving forward to embrace opportunities to advance our common regional and international priorities.
Can I go back? UN Secretary General asks Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky to meet him for the peace talks. I wonder if you welcome this step, and do you believe that any negotiation with Putin over Ukraine even possible?
Do we believe that any negotiation?
Yes, with Vladimir Putin even possible over Ukraine.
So again, we are supportive of a diplomatic process that achieves a diminishment of violence and ultimately an end to these hostilities through dialogue and diplomacy. That is what we would want to see happen. That is also what our Ukrainian partners have said they would like to see happen. Our Ukrainian partners at every step have been willing to meet, to engage virtually with Russian officials, but at every step we have seen that process bear essentially no fruit, not because of the lack of effort or lack of intent on the part of our Ukrainian partners, but because Moscow, the Kremlin, does not appear to be serious in its diplomatic initiatives. So it is our charge to do two things to change that, to try to change that calculus. One is to continue to provide security assistance to our Ukrainian partners so that they can continue to take on quite effectively in an extraordinary way the Russian forces that are inside their country, and two, to impose additional pressure and additional costs on the Kremlin, doing precisely the kinds of things that we did most recently yesterday. Imposing costs on those who are responsible for this war effort, imposing additional costs and closing loopholes for those who have attempted to evade our sanctions, closing off strategic opportunities for the Russian Federation through our export controls, and ultimately seeing to it that Moscow's economy, Moscow's financial system, those in the Kremlin, those around the Kremlin, are feeling the pain of what President Putin has done to the people of Ukraine, but also inflicted upon his own people. So that will continue to be our strategy. There was another part to your question?
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, in the back, yes.
Yes, going back to the Cuba talks, we understand that, and we spoke earlier in the week with Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz. He mentioned that Cubans represent currently the third largest group of migrants being apprehended at the border. I was going to ask you if someone, representative from the Department of Homeland Security, is participating in these talks today.
So the U.S. delegation is being led by our Deputy Assistant Secretary for Western Hemisphere Affairs, that's Emily Mandrella. The State Department will have representatives from our Consular Affairs Bureau, our Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, and the Chargé d'Affaires from our embassy in Havana, and representatives from DHS will also join. I'm sorry?
You don't have any idea when the meeting will end or when you're...
My understanding is shortly this afternoon. Yes, in the back.
Thank you.
Let me move around to the back. Go ahead.
Thank you. And congratulations on being sanctioned. I hope you didn't have to cancel your vacation in Kamchatka.
Fortunately, I had no rubles, and even if I did, they would be worthless by now anyway.
Okay, well, more seriously, President Biden said today that we can't advertise all that's being provided to Ukraine. Said that we need to speak softly and carry a big javelin. But does this refer to the stuff that other countries are providing, or the U.S. too? In other words, is the list that you publish of the equipment that you sent, is it exhaustive?
We have provided extensive information on precisely the type of weaponry and security assistance that we're providing to our Ukrainian partners. Just today, the Department of Defense issued a new statement listing what was in this package. We've also listed thematically much of what we have provided to our Ukrainian partners. It is, in all cases, not for us to say what each and every partner is supplying, but it is for us to work with our European allies, other partners, to see to it that elements that they may have in their inventories that are responsive to the needs that we're hearing from our Ukrainian partners are made available to Ukraine. And oftentimes we can help support that process. One example we've talked about was Slovakia's provision of the S-300 long-range anti-aircraft system. Slovakia was able to do that precisely because we were in a position to backfill Slovakia with the provision of a Patriot missile battery. So there have been arrangements like that where we have provided something to a partner and a partner has in turn provided it to the Ukrainians.
And was that a topic of conversation today with Slovenian Prime Minister Janša? There were reports that they were ready to send tanks to Ukraine.
Our support for the people of Ukraine was absolutely a topic of discussion.
Quick question on Iran.
Sure.
I know last Monday, you suggested in this podium that if Iran wanted to have the Revolutionary Guard lifted off the terror list, there had to be some kind of reciprocity.
I did not use those words. That's
okay. Maybe I misunderstood what you said. But if it's tit for tat or something like this, you require them to do something in return, what would it be? Do you have anything in mind that the Iranian must do to sort of have in return the designation, the terror designation of the Revolutionary Guard lifted?
We're not going to negotiate in public. What we will say is that the Iranians know that there is an opportunity to reach a mutual return to compliance with the JCPOA in a quick manner if they are willing to do so. So we are, that has been on the table for some time. We've worked very closely through our European allies and partners on this. And again, it remains our in our best interest to see a resumption of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, precisely because it would afford us non-proliferation benefits that would be to our advantage. And in the first instance, the advantage it would bring would be an elongation of the breakout time that was close to a year when the JCPOA was originally in full effect. It is a breakout time, that is to say the time it would take Iran to amass enough fissile material to produce a nuclear weapon if it chose to do so. That time has shrunk considerably, especially since 2018, after the last administration abandoned the Iran deal and Iran itself walked away from some of the nuclear constraints it was previously under. Our goal is to see those nuclear constraints reimposed on Iran, to see Iran once again permanently, verifiably prevented from obtaining a nuclear weapon.
Sir, you said we have the mining programs, for example. What is needed for the United States?
Sorry, what program?
The mining.
T-mining.
Yeah, the mining program, sorry. For example, what is needed for the United States to start the mining in Azerbaijan, Karabakh?
We can get you more information on this, but again, I would refer you to the report we recently put out regarding our activities.
I'm curious if you know, if you can find out how much, if any, of the non-security, in other words, the financial and humanitarian economic support aid to Ukraine, has been kind of earmarked for the treatment or the transport of wounded Ukrainians out of Ukraine into other countries for medical treatment, if any, if you know, and even if you don't know, is there a concern that there are people, Ukrainians who've been wounded, civilians and soldiers who've been wounded and may die because they can't get the proper medical treatment in Ukraine?
We'll see if there's anything we can provide you on a specific earmarking like that. But the other point I would make is that we've also provided, as of today, $1 billion in direct budgetary assistance. And so we provided the Ukrainian government with resources it can use as it best sees fit. But if there's anything we can add on a specific
Right, but that would presumably be for care that they would provide inside Ukraine. And there may be instances in which people are not able to be adequately treated inside.
We'll see if there's anything we can add there. Thank you. One last in the back.
Just a couple of follow-ups on Iran. You mentioned the breakout time. Do you have an estimate of what that's down to? And then there was a report in Israeli media that a senior Israeli official said the U.S. had notified European counterparts that the administration doesn't plan on delisting the IRGC. Is there any truth to that?
I don't have any comments on that second question beyond the fact that, again, we're not going to negotiate in public, but we're coordinating closely with our European allies on this, as well as with the broader P5+1. On your first question on the breakout time, what I can say is that when the JCPOA was in full effect, the breakout time was measured at about 12 months. It was always measured in months. Now the more appropriate and accurate measurement is weeks, but I'm just not able to give additional detail. Thank you all very much.
Yes.